meeting to order. Have the pledge to the flag. Roll call.
Mrs. Brew? Here. Mr. Babalani? Dr. Hayes?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Here.
Mr. Pop?
Here.
Mr. Babalani had a family emergency and requested to be excused. Is
I'll
there a
make,
motion?
I'll make a motion we excuse Mr. Babalani.
Support.
Roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew? Yes.
Approval of the meeting to the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 1st, 2016. Is there any questions or additions? Corrections? If not, we'd be in order for a motion.
I'll make a motion we approve minutes of regular meeting of February 1st, 2016.
Support.
Roll call.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew? Yes. Dr. Hayes?
Yes. Approval of manifest 2016-3 in the amount of $212,343.22. Any questions, Mr. Mangini?
A couple questions here. Page 1, under buildings and ground, Sunrise Plumbing, replace heater elements.
Yeah, that's our water heater.
Oh, okay. Under police department, Elcon systems, I'm assuming this was a budgeted item, capital implement, new equipment, rebuild 80 radios for
Right.
$1,500.
Yep, that's,
Okay. And I got one other thing here. Comment here, I see our purchase power for the month was only $45,000, which is really holding in there good. And then on page 4, hydro rebuild unit number 3, is that a duplicate, Mary? Because they're both the same numbers and the same price? But 5 or 6 from the bottom there.
Yeah, I
Runner
see 'em.
repair?
I'll have to look and see if that's a duplicate lead.
Okay, that's all I have.
Mrs. Brew, any questions?
I only have the same one Lee did on the hydro rebuild unit 3.
Mr. Pop?
no. No questions.
The only question I had was on property acquisition payments to Spring Valley Ranch. If we're paying that much interest, wouldn't it be worthwhile paying that off, or is that an agreement? Spring Valley, it looks like we're paying 46% of the payment was for interest.
Well, that's a cash flow discussion that probably should have during budget. That's why we had the agreement, to do it this way, not hinder our cash flow.
Which page was that on?
Page 3. So I think that was one of the best things this council has ever, the past council ever did, was buying that land and able to annex all our property in. But I just wondered about the cash flow, so I'll have that during the budget. Is there a motion to approve manifest 2016-3?
I make that motion.
Support.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Now we can hear from the audience. If anybody has any questions on any agenda item, please limit yourself to 5 minutes. There'll be further time at the end of the meeting for a discussion on any topic. If not, we'll move on to public hearings, which are none. And now the communications, resolution 2013-3, the Oak Crest Golf Course lease agreement and bylaws. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something that we've been working on for coming up on a year now, working with the Golf Commission and the Golf Club, working with our attorney and their attorney, and coming up with a lease agreement that meets the requirements that we are under as being a government entity, working with our auditor, Mr. Scott Kinney. And I think this past week we had some additional discussions. One of the areas that is our concern, and was our concern going in to this last week, and then we had to make a few minor changes right at the end of the week based on what Mr. Kenny suggested or desired, because in dealing with Department of Treasury, they want us to separate the golf club in certain ways that they don't want it to show as a component unit of government. And I think that's an important distinction. And we want them to have their own books, we have our own books. And I had a conversation about 20 days or so ago with Treasury, and they were totally comfortable in moving in this direction. If we did not, then we would have to go back to them and come up with an agreement with Treasury and how we're dealing with this. So I think it's important. I can turn this over to Grant because he's done a lion's share of, especially on the language side and working with Mr. Kenny. But I think we finally have the agreement in a position that meets everybody's acceptance.
Thanks, Ray. This has been a couple months in the process, and we have some members of the Golf Commission here tonight that have put a lot of effort into meeting with Ray and I, and then also Candy and Lee, and have met I'm sure a lot of times outside of our presence to bring this matter forward and continue putting forth an effort to make our golf course, our Oakcrest, that's been here for going on, I think it was founded back in 1923, but I've seen that Oakcrest Golf Club, the corporation, has been in place since 1973, and this has been a very successful, very well-run golf course for a number of years, but as times change and as we've had different issues regarding legislation and funding come up, as Ray has noted, the recommendation or the request has been to start the separation process. We've been working on that for some time. That all being said, the lease that you folks have in front of you is the culmination of a long road to get to this point. As Ray indicated, one of the frustrating parts is when you have a situation like this where you have a entity that is affiliated with the city and working, trying to disconnect or to separate, there's a lot of different processes in doing so. But there's also a lot of different issues regarding, it's not just the law, it's also tax issues, which also coincide with the law. There's a lot of different players involved between the alcohol, liquor licenses, there's tax issues, there's policy issues, and so there's a lot of different layers of speed bumps to run through. And Mr. Kenny has been integral in working with us and had the agreement that we worked through, and I basically sent it to him to look at as from our auditor's perspective, any suggestions? Is this okay from your perspective as our auditor, because we need to be in compliance with these audit requirements? And there were, as Ray indicated last week, a couple of different issues that popped up. I think some are more substantive and more of an issue than others. I have spoken, albeit a little bit before the meeting, unfortunately, but have addressed some of these changes with the members of the commission that are present with us today. The agreement reflects the embodiment and the nature of the agreement that we've been working through for months. It really is a document that reflects what the Oakcrest Golf Course, the golf club, on behalf of the members. It's something that I think is in place to make sure to facilitate its success now and into the future, and also addresses the issues that the city has with making sure we have our separation and moving forward. But allows Oakcrest that ability to be successful now in the future. So the lease agreement encompasses the terms we've discussed, the terms we've addressed, but as I indicated with Mr. Kenny, there were a few issues that popped up regarding whether or not to sell certain equipment versus lease certain equipment, and some of the terms associated with that. And I think speaking with the commission very briefly, I anticipated that would be an issue potentially. I think the numbers are what we've been discussing, but ultimately the way we get there, there were some last minute changes on the auditor's recommendation, and basically shouldn't say recommendation, it was, this is what you have to do, and you have to change some of these terms. So that happened very recently, and as I advised the commission, we had presented to the council, have them take a look at it. The biggest issue, frankly, folks, is regarding the equipment that's out there. How does that get into the hands of the golf course so they can do their job, keeping the greens in the pristine condition they're always in, the fairways in the great condition they're in, and have that equipment to do so, and making sure we are in compliance with our obligations as a city government. We went back and forth for quite a while regarding a sale versus a lease, and as of last week, we had looked at moving forward with a lease, or a sale rather, but our auditor said, no, we need to move forward with a lease. So that did change as of last week, and I did share that with the commission. Additionally, as to the terms of how that gets paid, we had worked through some different scenarios, and he gave us additional guidance on how that was to be presented and included within the lease, and that was changed. But it was a material change from what the commission and we had talked about last week. This agreement, I think what Ray and I chatted about, the best way to proceed on this, at the council's pleasure. If the council has questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them, and with Ray here as well, and some of the members of the commission are here. But to agree and approve the lease agreement as it's written, pending, of course, the approval of the commission, and they have to vote on, or the golf club has to vote on it as well, and giving the authorization between myself and Ray after approval, if there's nothing of substance or nothing of major changes that need to be made, we can approve it. It's basically a contingent approval that it still has to be finalized, and if there's no material terms that have to be changed, we're approving it in substance. And if there's anything of material terms, then we have to come back before the council, of course, and address those material terms. But if it's just some language that we have to address, I'd ask the council to consider approval with that consideration as well.
Where was the change? Because I was at that meeting.
It was on page 5, Councilwoman Brew, looking at paragraph 16, less or owned grounds equipment, and paragraph 18, lease payments. Before, in essence, with the grounds equipment, we've identified the equipment that would be included in the transfer. Folks, the other thing to remember is that over the years, the Golf Commission and the Golf Club have been relatively autonomous. And they have, but through the members' efforts and the fees that have been paid, the green fees and the revenue that they have produced, that those payments have come to the city, and that money has been used to purchase golf equipment. So the equipment that's been purchased over the years is part of the transfer, and that's in Exhibit B that identifies the equipment that is included in that transfer. And then paragraph 18, before the original reference last week we looked at was doing a sale of that equipment. Now we simply are using a lease to own, in essence, versus a outright sale. There's some issues regarding security interests. In essence, it doesn't really change a whole lot. We still have UCC filings to protect the city's interest in that equipment until the payment is made in full, but it is a lease instead of an outright sale per Mr. Kenny's recommendation, and again, a little stronger than recommendation, later this is what you have to do.
What did the original one say, grant on 18 for the sale price? Do you remember?
It was the same sale price as far as the full amount.
The amount hasn't changed?
The amount had not changed. It was just a matter of how it was paid, but then also there was an interest rate attached, prime, I think it was prime plus 1, was that Mr. Kenny referenced as being, it had to be attached to that for the purchase, or the lease to purchase.
Okay, I see the two numbers. Now, is that gonna be a problem? We had talked about we're gonna need the machine to fertilize in that. Is that gonna make a difference in that?
I don't believe that'll be an issue. That's a functional issue that we're gonna have to work out, and the language doesn't change the dynamics of that functional issue. So that's a coordinating effort that we've said that we're gonna make sure it happens, work together on it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that didn't change any of.
Yeah,
that.
the language didn't change that, that's still an operating.
So the language
question.
didn't change, but, and the amount didn't change, but instead of saying that it's, well, it says it's a lease agreement on here. Lease, oh no, it says leasee agrees to pay, okay.
The valuation of what the golf club is obligating itself to pay back to the city did not change. That number has been agreed upon for some time, throughout negotiations with the commission. We hashed out that amount, and that's still represented as discussed
Okay.
last
I
week.
just wanted to make sure the numbers were the same in that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
numbers are the same.
Did you guys get a chance to look at this new one or no?
No, they have not.
Okay.
Yeah, and we got a new information on our desk when we came in today, and I was looking through that, and one of the things I wondered about was the list of the insurances that they're obligated to pay, and it gives a dollar amount. Is that going to be adjusted every year, or?
That is adjusted every year. You know, it's based on the assessment that the insurance company makes, depreciated values. So those are something we'll work out every year with them.
It looks like there's a lot of effort put into this. I think it's a very significant agreement for the city. Like you said, it's almost 100 years that the golf course has been there, and to suddenly change the way it's managed, I think is a significant thing. And it's certainly something that sounds like it's overdue. And I think there shouldn't be any problems passing this. My request would be that we delay voting on this till the next meeting. Mr. Babalani had requested that. Plus, it would give anybody in the community to read it over and make any comments. I don't think we have to pass it tonight. I think we can pass it at the next meeting.
One of the issues I have is that because I talked with Treasury last month, and because in the latest audit, the golf club was actually designated as a component unit of government. Treasury had some issues, and I have to file a deficit elimination plan. And when we talked, they were totally comfortable with this scenario. If we don't pass this, I'm up on my 30 days. We didn't push this forward last month because of the issue with short counsel, and at the last meeting, we didn't think it was fair to have a new council member have to deal with this right off the jump. Plus, we didn't, you know, we've been going back and
Well, it would
forth.
have been nice for us to at least get it last meeting so we could look at it for 2
Well,
weeks.
we didn't have this until, I mean, we've been working on this language for the better part of a couple weeks with the auditor, so. So, I mean, I will have to go back to Treasury and ask for an extension.
Are we already up on our 30 days?
Yeah, I mean, we were fine with this meeting, but we have 3 weeks before the next meeting. So I'll have to go back and request an extension based on that.
Or we could have
delay.
a special meeting too, right?
We could have a special meeting, but again, I think we're still gonna be up against that 30 day, so I would still, if you don't pass it tonight, I would, ask for an extension based on that.
What does that involve?
Just a contact with Department of Treasury.
Do you think they'll have a problem extending in another 30 days?
Boy, I hate to guess what they'll say, but I don't think so, but, you know, it is Treasury. So, Mary, what are your feelings?
Yeah, exactly. You did flip a coin.
And what they would do is they would withhold the revenue sharing until we get this taken care of.
So again, I don't think there's
Quarterly
going
payment.
to be any problems passing this, but I hate to get something that we haven't even had a chance to read and say, yeah, you got to vote on this tonight, because it's otherwise overdue. To me, it just doesn't seem right. I think the community ought to get a chance to read it over and make comments before the next meeting. That's my own personal opinion. There's 3 other council members, so if somebody wants to make a motion one way or the other.
You know, I think the basis of the language is pretty much the same as what you received over the weekend. I think it's just, there's some changes that you highlighted. You know.
Yeah, as far as the change from Monday, or from the document you had on Friday was phenomenal.
Well, I'm not objecting to that. I'm objecting to the fact that the city hasn't had a chance to look at it, people in the community, and maybe they want to make some comments on it. The Gulf Commission hasn't
looked at it.
had a chance to look at it. And it just seems like we do this all the time, where we're rushed into making a decision because we have to do this right now. Well, it shouldn't come down to getting it on Friday and voting on a Monday. I think we ought to get 2 weeks at least, so it should have been passed out 2 weeks ago, so there would have been a chance for, and I know it creates a hardship for the city, but that's still my feeling. I hate getting something this substantial, this important, for me to look at it over the weekend and vote on it and not have a chance for the community to have any input on it. Because I do think this is an important decision.
Well, I've been involved in this from day one, and there's parts in here that I don't care for as a council person or as an individual taxpayer, but I'm sure the people on the Gulf Commission or Gulf Club, whatever they're referred to now, they feel the same way too, that there's some things they don't like. But it was a good agreement. I think everybody would be happy, including the taxpayers. I'll just as soon get this over with, but we have to go back to the golf course themselves because of the wording change, which you weren't informed of until just tonight. So they're gonna have to have a meeting to discuss it anyway. Now, I don't know if that'll take a day or a week or a month. Personally, I'd like to get it over with, but do what you wanna do.
And you were part of the process. You were on the commission.
Right.
Yep.
You and Candy have been privy to all this information all along, and I've certainly been knowledgeable of the fact that we were doing this, but again, I'd like to, and I did read it over, and I see nothing wrong with it, but I think the community ought to have a chance to, something that's important, make a comment on, my own personal opinion.
You know, I sat in on these meetings and I don't have a problem. I'm with Lee. I think we worked out a good agreement. There's some things they don't like, probably some things we don't like, but I think it's a win-win for both situations. But I do feel like me and Lee were more privy because of course we were there in the conversations, and I would have to agree with Dr. Hayes if he wants to look it over a little longer before he makes a decision on it. And I'm sure Scott, I can't speak for Scott, but I'm sure he would like, would you like to?
I'd like to look it over, and I agree that with the changes that the Gulf Commission should look at it too. I mean, this is something big.
Right, and I kind of feel like, what if we pass it and then the Gulf Commission doesn't, they don't want it, you know? I know there ain't that big of a change, but I would like for them to be able to look over it and come back and say, okay.
Well,
One
and
thing-
I would not recommend to just do a simple passage. I mean, it has to be a contingent passage based upon their approval as well because of those changes in the terms from the auditor. Because it's different than what we talked about in some terms. And we've been working together as a community. I mean, as a small section of it, but working together to try to find something that works best for the golf course and the city. So I would agree with you though, Candy. I mean, it has to be, if the council's position was to pass it, to vote on it tonight, as the resolution indicates, it's passing it in principle with the caveat that, you know, if anything changes, you have to come back. But Mayor Hayes' comments are well-founded. Oakcrest has been an integral part of the city of Norway for years. And it does make some sense. I'm sure the council members have had their ear to the ground with the city's sentiment and the citizens' sentiment, but if people would like to come and comment, I think that's important as well.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, it is very complicated. That's why it's taken so long. I mean, with the legal language, the financial language, you know, with our auditor. What's really important is that when we get to the point of his audit, come next July or August, that he's gonna be able to check the boxes, the correct, you know, the way we need, so that Treasury's okay, because that goes to Treasury. One of the things that, I mean, there's always discussion out in the community ongoing, you know, and one of the things I want to make sure is clear is that this is not unusual. I mean, you can go to many communities and find arrangements. Mountain View Ice Arena is a good example. It's owned by the city of Iron Mountain. It's run by a board, and the Sioux Golf Course, the Gladstone Golf Course, I mean, there's many arrangements where the cities own property and then lease out through via a board of some sort or an arrangement. So we're not breaking new ground. It's just a matter of all of the accounting and legal language that's necessary in order to make this right and protecting the taxpayers. You know, that was part of what Mr. Kenny was doing this last week, is making sure that that language is correct. So, you know, that's just one thing as we go along and have this discussion through the community, that it's, you know, we're not divesting ourselves of the asset. We're running or having an agreement of having it operated. So I think that's an important thing to remember.
When were these changes made?
Which ones?
These ones, right?
From the auditor
From the, yeah.
or from,
From when we got these on Saturday, when were these changed?
Today, weren't they?
many of them were today?
Today?
Yeah.
So you were aware of the change, was Ray aware of the change?
Late this afternoon.
Late this afternoon.
So you didn't have enough time to contact everybody to?
No, no.
No.
Again, I don't think there'd be any problems passing this, but since it's an important thing, I think the city ought to have a chance, the citizens ought to have a chance to make comments, and I think that this agreement should be made public then, so people can see it and vote on it at the next meeting. Would be my suggestion.
Is that your motion?
No. But I will make that motion then that we make available the lease agreement with the Old Crest Golf Course in the city of Norway available to the populace, and that this be put on the agenda for discussion and voting at the next scheduled meeting.
Support.
Dr. Hayes,
Yes?
Mr. Menegini,
Yes.
Mr. Pop,
Yes.
Mrs. Brew.
Yes.
Ordinance number 418, I think we could,
You have to table that one.
we have to table, that doesn't have to be done before the other one?
You really can't repeal the golf commission until you sign the agreement, so.
The
So we
question,
can't do that until after they vote then, as well.
Right, I think you want to pass your lease agreement, and then you would repeal the ordinances and dissolve the golf commission and move forward.
got a question on that, repealing all this stuff, which is fine, do it next time, but you yourself said we gotta make sure everything is done right. I think you got a typo in here, and it might change things down the road. About 3/4 of the way down, sentence starts, it is also important to remove and official ties. I'm assuming that means any official ties, so the club is not a component of unit of government? Is that a typo?
Where are you? You're on the council report? Oh,
It says remove and official instead of any official.
okay.
Where's that at, Lee?
That's the old council report, or that's,
This
what's
is
the date on that?
February 12th. This is the seventh item on the list here. Yeah, ordinance number 418, repeal the ordinances. It's four lines from the bottom. It says it is also important to remove and official, where I think it should be any official ties from the city.
Okay, it's in the report, yeah, it's language within the report.
So then we really can't vote on that
Yeah.
until after the golf course accepts the, so maybe if they meet before our next meeting, then we could vote on that at the next meeting.
Sure.
Do we need a motion to,
No, I think we just
Motion
table
to
it.
table.
table it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We should do probably a motion to table.
I'll make that motion, ordinance 418, repeal Oral Crest Golf Course, ordinance 325, 327, and 378, to be tabled till the next meeting.
Support.
Mr. Menegini,
Yes.
Mr. Pop,
Yes.
Mrs. Brew,
Yes.
Dr. Hayes.
Yes. Next would be a resolution 2016, well, it would be 3, Midwest Leasing Corporation request for time extension. Mr. Anderson?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this issue did come up in November, and the council at that time made a motion to move forward with having staff draft a deed for reverting the property back to the city of Norway. During that time, Mr. Lefebvre contacted my office and requested, said that he was not in favor of, at first he was okay with signing a reversion deed, but he changed his mind and wanted to challenge that. He sent a letter, which I have put in your packet, requesting a time extension, and so we moved that forward to council for consideration.
Any discussion of the council?
Didn't we, you said we already made a decision on this, right?
You did at the time in November, and he sent a scathing email, basically wanting to have his chance to make a case. I think originally he was okay, and then thought about it and said he would like to challenge or actually ask the council for the extension, which has been done in the past, so.
I'm Howard, I'm trying to interrupt you there.
That's okay.
I'm here on behalf of him, I'm Gil Lefebvre, and I was talking to him, he's in North Dakota right now, and he just wanted me to touch on a couple bases to let the city know that right now he's right in the process of having a third buyer for the third piece of property. I believe there's 2 sold right now, so there's a third buyer right now for the third house going in, and he's got over $100,000 into the utilities and filling in the mine shaft. So he's asking for a 3-year extension.
The letter was 5 years, but I thought 3 years was more reasonable myself.
I think he just said, he's asking for 5, but 3, I think we're gonna try to get the last couple houses in and be done with this,
I know he's been concentrating his efforts over in North Dakota, but he
Well,
said.
he's coming back here, he's wrapping things up, and we're gonna really try to get this wrapped up. I know you guys wanna get this resolved too, as far as you want 5 houses in there, obviously for the tax base in Norway too. I mean, there was no tax base when this all started out, so it has been a benefit to the city of Norway.
Right. And I would agree that, I would agree that 3 years is more reasonable than 5, so that's why I'd like to see the motion for the extension for, it would be
What was
resolution
the-
2016-3.
I'm sorry, can I ask?
Go ahead.
What was the change of heart, because at first he was all right with,
I think when it first started out, he was worried about not being able to get rid of those last couple lots, but as of lately, we have one that's pretty much sold, and there's another one that another guy wants to buy already, so if we have to, we're probably gonna just put a spec house on, the 5th one, if we have to get down right to the nitty gritty on it.
we do have lawyer fees into this now, don't we? So we have some money invested in it now too.
Well, when did this lease actually up here? I've got some different dates here. Extension till November of 2014, is that the last one?
Yeah,
So here we're
we're in a year.
over a
past.
year later, he's
Yeah.
coming asking for another extension. I have problems with that.
Well, he did put up, he had 2 houses put up, and
The power was, another big issue was the power, back, and bear with me because I don't know all the details, but from what I got out of it, the power was owned by We Energy, so it had to be rerouted, which cost almost 50 grand.
Well, the power is the cities.
Huh?
The power is the cities.
Right, but it had to come from the city of Norway.
Right.
We Energies wouldn't let
Well, under the choice law, if you're in the city limits, you get city power.
Okay.
So We Energies was not able to expand into the city limits.
Right. But I mean, I think everybody should really look at that mine shaft that was 1,300 feet deep, that was filled in, it was checked by the mine inspector, they were very happy. That saved the city of Norway a bunch of money. I think everybody gotta look at all the things that were done here, and we are trying.
Well, I guess I just don't understand why a year later you decide to come back and want an extension on it, because oops, all of a sudden somebody might want to buy it, build a house. I mean, I'm all for houses being built in the city, but I don't like the idea of being over a year late.
It's been that long, Brad?
Yeah, I'm looking at the paperwork from back before my time. This has been in place for some time. Mr. Oliveris did up the agreements and everything was executed appropriately. I can't answer for why it wasn't done, if it was just overlooked by the developer and didn't think to come back, and we brought it to their attention and were proactive in doing so. It sounds like Mr. Lefebvre had a change of heart. Initially was, let's do a quick claim deed and be done with it. I think I issued a memo to the council on the process, and started that process, but then we got the letter from Mr. Lefebvre, and we said, well, if the council wishes to reconsider, I didn't certainly want to spend more of the taxpayer money on going into in-depth preparing for litigation if the council's position changed, so that was the reason I came back before the council.
When this expired, did he get a notice in the mail, or
No.
do people get notices? So it's their,
That was an oversight. I'll admit that was an oversight. We picked that up this past summer.
oh, so he never got a letter or anything saying?
No, he got his notice this past summer.
Do you know when?
It was probably August timeframe.
I'm not positive, but I believe it was August that he caught note of it, and that's when we started talking about it.
Yeah.
It's always been my feeling that the city ought to work with people trying to make developments, and I don't think giving them a 3-year extension would be a hardship on the city. My own personal opinion. So if somebody wants to make a motion for or against, or if there's further discussion, Mr. Pop, do you have any comments?
I think 3 years would be rather fair. Give them a 3-year extension.
I was looking more maybe out of 1 year, I think.
We could make it 3 years retroactive to the date of the expiration of his last one at 2014. That would give him 2 years.
That would give them 2 years. Meet in the middle.
I'm okay with that.
I'll make a motion, we give him a 3-year extension retroactive to when the last agreement expired.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes,
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
No.
Next on the agenda is approval of electrical line extension reimbursement policy request for extension of time. And this has to do with the same issue.
Yeah, it came up with the same issue. I think the Hudsons built or purchased property in the same subdivision and paid for line extension. Under the current city policy, there's a 5-year period that if anybody else, they're at the end of the line. So if anybody else builds within that and ties up to it, that they get reimbursed. They're right at their 5-year, just past their 5-year agreement. And, they had some concerns with this process in our extension. So they said, well, if you're going to give them an extension, we would like to have an extension as well. And I said, well, this is city policy, and I thought it was more proper that the council weigh in on that policy at this point. I did not bring this to the Electric Utility Board. It's something that we were planning to have a meeting. In fact, if you look at my recommendation, it's my recommendation is that you table it and send it to the Electric Utility Board and let them look at the policy and weigh in on it. Unless you want to grant it to them, you know, that's fine as well too. But if you got concerns, I would send it to the Electric Utility Board and let them chew on it.
I think they have to look at that policy myself, but certainly if that's the policy that they've come up with, we certainly should defer to them, get their recommendation.
That is the policy that they came up with. So it was 10 years, and then they had it reverted back down to 5. But that was a number of years ago.
In my opinion, 10 is a more favorable time frame. Do we need a motion on that?
I'll make a motion that the request for time extension be tabled and that the issue be scheduled for the Electric Utility Board.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Next on the agenda is approval of council of consent on filling open positions. Mr. Babalani requested that we defer this until the next meeting. I certainly have no objection to any discussion at this time if we want to have that discussion. Does anybody have any comments?
I can't see holding off on this because we need the bodies, especially in the electric department. And I don't know how they're gonna handle that extra, basically 20 hours for the utility clerk. And I say we move forward with this. If the vote's 2-2, well, then it's gonna have to go to the next meeting. And at the next meeting, I make a request, we table it for another 2 weeks because I'm not gonna be here at the next meeting.
Well, like I put in the report, all of the positions are more than budgeted. We're looking at some of the details in the hours on the utility clerk. The electrical supervisor, that's a situation where, again, that's completely budgeted within the context of the utility superintendent going and, you know, the current budget, the way the costs are associated within that budget. And then, of course, the lineman is a replacement for, you know, that we have in the budget. So, I mean, from a budgeted standpoint, which I know Lee asked quite a bit about, well, is it budgeted? These are completely budgeted items. So, this is something that was brought up at the last meeting, and so, you know, I put it on the agenda. I feel like, appreciate if you consider moving it forward, because I think we do have to move forward with our, you know, with our staffing.
Well, I don't understand why you need to bring this before the council anyway, but
Because I think I don't want to be accused of going around the council. That's why I brought it forward. I gave you a copy of the charter. That was questioned at the last meeting. If you have any questions on that, Grant and I can both, you know, discuss that. There is some language in the charter which talks about the department heads and consent. I'm always a little bit confused about approval and consent, but anything under department heads, I've always taken the approach that I wouldn't go out and hire any new position without it going and getting approved through the budget anyway. So, you know, we have a very detailed salary spreadsheet which labels all the positions. So, you know, it does talk in detail about the manager's responsibility as a personnel director in hiring and firing. So, you know, I think it's somewhat clear, you know, within the context of that. But because, like I said, I don't want to be accused of going around the council. So I put it on the agenda so that we can move this forward.
Well, even though you say that it's budgeted for, the city still has been spending a lot of money. And with Mr. Pickard leaving, there's some potential of saving money. And I would like to explore some of them different options before we go ahead and approve all 3 of these. I know that we waited for Mr. Hayes to come back to vote on something, and I would, in due respect, do the same thing for Mark.
do you have any concerns? Or?
No, I have nothing to say.
Well, again, I'm not sure why we're even having this on the agenda. I don't think anybody object to hiring a utility, replacing someone who left recently, utility clerk. I guess the only concern, the biggest concern that Mrs. Brew had and Mr. Babalani was the other main position.
But that position needs to be, I'd rather not talk about it publicly. But
Should we have a private go into this?
I don't think you can go in a closed session. Grant, you'd have to weigh in on this for
Personnel?
closed session on personnel, but
I think
You know.
you could because it's a financial issue too. I mean, Grant's the lawyer here, but
Well, there's only very specific reasons you can go into closed session. And talking about whether or not to hire or fire talking about hire and fire, some of those things, but I don't know that this necessarily,
that's not hire or fire, it's,
Or-
if are we going to, post these positions? That's not hiring or firing.
that's not closed session. We can't go into closed session and determine whether or not to fill a position or not. I think that's for the public to to hear about and understand the council's positions. It's very limited on what you can go into closed session, litigation, attorney recommendations. Whether or not to fill or not fill a position is not closed session.
And I don't like talking about personnel matters. You obviously have some concerns about, if an individual, besides myself or the attorney, we're open game, but anybody else is, we have a responsibility to not.
I don't think it comes down to a personal issue or it's the positions. It has nothing to do with who would be in the positions. It's the positions.
And that's why I put the electrical supervisor there, is because the responsibilities of that department, that position, needs to get filled.
That's in charge of an $8 million budget. We need a body there.
Honestly, I don't have a problem with deferring on the utility clerk and the lineman. Those are positions, but we have to move forward with the supervision in the department. And I think we have to get that finalized.
And I also feel we need that lineman too, because we've got lots of projects down the road. If the money is there, and it's a business, we have to take care of our customers and we have to do a good job doing it, and we can't do it with the bodies we have. We need the bodies.
I agree, we may need people, but I think that, as far as I know, I haven't got any calls that the electric department has had any problems and things are going fine. As far as I know, I didn't get anything, and Mark will be back in 3 weeks. I don't have a problem waiting to vote in 3 weeks.
You're going to be gone the next meeting, Lee?
Yep.
Because I think your vote is going to be key on this. I'm open to a special meeting
Ray,
between
aren't you
now and then.
gone too? Aren't you gone too?
Yeah, I'm not here too.
They're both gone next meeting.
You're going to be here the 5th Monday of the month?
We have another meeting set up, but I guess we'd have to probably change it.
I don't oppose to a special meeting or change of the meeting.
Well, I really request you not do this when I'm not here.
No, I mean to
So
change it
not-
so you and, so it's full council and you and Grant.
I agree, we should have full council for major decisions. So if we could come up.
I would request we go to next week rather than the 29th, because we have a ZBA meeting set up for that for the 29th. And then I know we can change it, but, it's
A week from tonight, then?
a week from tonight, yeah.
Or we could go to a Tuesday.
Yeah, you could do any night, really. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to
we
be
could
Monday
go
night.
to a Tuesday instead of the Monday.
Ray, a half hour, we couldn't do that in an hour. could move.
Well, you have to have, at least have 18 hours for posting.
Could you have it after the ZBA meeting, is what we were thinking?
Yeah,
That
or I
Monday
could
night?
move it till 6 o'clock.
Yeah, you could have it earlier. You could have it at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, or you could have it earlier. I don't think it'll take that long.
When's that meeting?
The 29th,
6:30.
that, I have one scheduled for 6:30, but we could do council at 5 or 7:30.
Or the 22nd, which would be next.
I'd say I go with the 29th, because Mark doesn't know what the situation's gonna be.
Well, if you're willing to go like earlier,
That's fine with me.
Does anyone have a problem with meeting like at 5?
What time is the ZBA?
6:30.
Thursday would be better for me if you're meeting at 5.
How about 5:30? It's not gonna take that long. One thing.
Okay, 5:30. Is there a motion to have a special meeting, or do we need a motion for that?
Yeah, I would recommend you do a motion for that.
You need a motion to table the,
Well, just have a special meeting for that event, for that discussion, on the 29th at 5:30.
I'll make that motion to, move that, have a special meeting at 5:30 on February 29th for the consent of filling open positions.
There's support?
Support.
Roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
No,
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
That's our meeting, hopefully, tonight. Does anybody in the audience like to address the council on any matters? If so, please limit your discussion to 5 minutes. List your name and address for the record.
I need to get that guy's name.
If nobody has any comments, Mr. Pop, would you have any comments?
I have none.
Mrs. Brew?
I have none.
Mr. Mangini?
I got a couple items. I see Gladstone got 1.6 to 1.8 million dollar grant for a non-motorized bike trail, and it's not gonna cost them anything, because what grant isn't coming from the state, the Hannibal Indian tribe is gonna donate the balance. How much that is, I have no idea, but were these one of the deals that you know of that we were competing with on our grant for Strawberry Lake?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if it came through the DNR trust fund.
Yeah, okay.
And we did talk to the tribe in Hannibal, and because we're in Dickinson County, they can't contribute towards our projects. So,
Okay. Just remember that, people, when you go down to Hannibal. Okay, second item. I see Iron Mountain is advertising for audit proposals for 2016 through 2017. Is it too early for us to put a bid out there for asking for bids for our audit proposals for the next year?
Do we have agreements with Mr. Kenny?
It's a year. I think we just added on this last year because of all the doings with the Norway Vulcan Sewer Authority. We decided to not even go out looking for anybody. Am I right on that, Ray?
I think we did a one-year extension.
Extension
Because of the rural development
because of
projects.
that, yeah.
But I think that might be through June 30th of 2017. I'll have to look
Okay,
and see
check
where
on
we're
that.
at.
Okay.
I know for sure we're through June 30th this year.
I thought it was just the 1 year added on. Maybe it was 2. I could be
I'll
wrong.
double check on that.
Another comment, the new wing on that plow truck seems to be working nice. I know they only go through my neighborhood once versus 2 trucks making 2 passes. How are we doing on the project, Ray? I know you've been talking about getting the guys out there while the ground is froze and put the corduroy in, whatever it was. They knew somebody to take care of those bridges. Have we done anything on that yet?
no, we haven't done anything on that yet.
Okay, I mean, another month from now, things will start to thaw out. Okay, and I see we only had 5 trees ordered
Yep. So
from
far.
customers, but now, how many are we gonna order?
I haven't gotten with Otto yet. We're gonna
Oh,
sit down
okay,
here
well,
within the next week and
Okay.
get that finalized.
And you might wanna talk to Dr. Hayes there about as to what kind of trees we want. I know they're limited, but
I think you guys
Doc's
are
the
gonna-
tree guy.
I think you guys are gonna meet. Did you guys?
I haven't gotten together with them.
Okay.
And the one other thing, budget hearings. Are we gonna start those shortly?
Yeah, I have to schedule some specific nights.
Okay.
We've been working on that. I mean, with some of the backlog in the office, it's, you know, it's been tough getting the sheets together, but we're getting there.
Okay, that's all I have.
I had a couple of concerns, I guess. As far as the hydro report, do we need a closed session for that, or you're gonna get together with us individually to let us know what's going on, or?
Grant, well, I think we could have a closed session on that one.
Because it's pending litigation.
Yeah, it's part of that pending litigation. I haven't had a chance to go through it completely yet or talk back with the engineers. So once we do that, then we'll have the closed session. And go through it. So,
But you're not
probably
gonna
at
be
the
here,
next well, I'm not gonna be here at the next meeting.
So it'll be a month from now then.
Right. I mean, I can share you the results, let you know what it is. Just, we won't be able to do the closed session until I get back.
I also have concerns that we're cutting a fair number of oak trees at the hydro plant, and that there is oak wilt in the area, and yet every time I bring it up, it's always gonna be cut in August, and I'd like something in writing to reassure me that it's okay to cut oaks in August when there's oak wilt in the area, because it's my understanding you should not cut anything with oaks until the weather starts to cool, September, October. So I would like to see something in writing before they start cutting in August. Otherwise, I'd make a motion and hopefully pass that we don't cut any oak trees in August.
Who does the cutting?
Well, that one is by Minrick. So we're gonna, you know, we have the contract already set out with them. Again, that's Otto's handles that for us. So that's another thing I'll meet with them on.
Okay, because every time I bring it up, it's always gonna be done in August, and I don't know why they have to do it in August. Why can't they wait till September? You know, they probably got other projects they wanna do in September, but to me, it's very important not to spread oak wilt out in our property. We've got very valuable oaks out there, and we're not cutting them all, so I don't wanna see the rest of them die or contribute to their demise anyway. And in your report, you commented that $20,000 wouldn't be enough for a building out there, so hopefully we'll discuss with the DDA this week, because our meeting is gonna be Wednesday instead of last Wednesday. It's
Right,
this
I have that
Wednesday.
on the agenda, and I wanted to go through that.
And discuss it, but
Yeah.
still, I'd like to see that, since that money was obtained through land that Ford donated to us, that we really can't use that money except, in my opinion, except for improvements at that site, and hopefully name after Ford or something.
Well, I'm gonna try and get some kind of a, budget, you know, as to what kind of building and what kind of costs we'd be looking at to see what would work there.
Okay, well, we have to decide what we're gonna do, but.
Yeah.
And I bring this up because two people in the last 2 weeks have brought up to me the concern that the city has fluoridated water, and somehow they're gonna get poisoned from that. I think that's one of the best things the city has ever done, because it made a huge difference in the amount of decay that our children has in their teeth. But if that's a concern of people, we should be able to provide water without fluoride, and the spring is the ideal location for that. We should be able to apply or provide our citizens with free water from the spring if they want to go get it, rather than going to the store and buying water. And I guess that's my concerns. Grant, do you have any other comments?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Anderson?
No, I have nothing.
With that, do we need a motion to adjourn then?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there support?
Support.
Mr. Menegini?
No.
Hayes?
I guess so, yes. With that, we're adjourned. And Lee, you have to stay here. I almost voted no. I almost voted no just to see what it. Tim doesn't want it. I didn't want to say it. He doesn't want that.
No, I gotta phone a coin or something.
He doesn't want, because that, there's quite a bit now. This one I would say no, because that utility code deals with all the utilities, not just electric.